All right, we're going to get started. As we know, everyone has such busy schedules, and thank you for spending your afternoon with us. And thank you so much for all that you do just every day in your classrooms, your libraries, your bookstores to connect young readers with the books that they need. I'm going to pass it off to Irene at Levine Querido, who will be introducing our fabulous first author guest.
Thank you so much, Andy. I have the joy, the honor, the privilege to introduce Lorraine Avila. That's a name that you're going to want to remember. This book is going to take the world by storm next April. Lorraine Avila is a storyteller who was born and raised in the Bronx, New York, and has Caribbean roots in the Dominican Republic. Avila spent a decade as an educator in the K-12 education system. She's a BA from Fordham University in English, an MA in teaching from New York University, and an MFA from the University of Pittsburgh. The Making of Yolanda la Bruja is her YA debut. I'm so excited for her to talk about it with you all today. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Lorraine.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining. Like it was said already, it's like the middle of a workday, so I really appreciate it and I'm excited to be here. I heard there's some librarians mostly, so I'm just really honored. I love librarians and I'm so appreciative of everyone's work. So The Making of Yolanda is my first YA novel, and it really was inspired by my decade teaching, I want to say in general, but specifically teaching at two schools. The first one was in Brooklyn, and it was during the time where I was getting my MA at NYU, and I was teaching at this social justice centered school where the student population was intentionally diverse. In New York City, schools, especially charter schools, are based off lotteries. So, the folks who started that school went through the system of making sure like income levels and all these things were kind of set in a way so that students would be coming from all walks of life. And I was really into teaching in that type of school, specifically because in the past I had taught in schools that were Black and Brown diverse, right? We had students from all over the Caribbean and Africa, and students who came from places that I grew up in, like the Bronx. But this school really challenged this idea of like, what would it look like to put students of all different backgrounds together? And so I taught there during the 2016 election. And as you know, a lot of us know, that was a very complicated year, I would say, especially at the school. During the time I was at the school, I was teaching, but I was also doing research for NYU, specifically around the voices of Black and Brown girls in 7th grade ELA classes at the school. For example, what allowed them to feel comfortable enough to participate during class discussions, which class discussions were at the very top of our priorities, I think, as educators, and what kept them from doing so. At the beginning, the girls who ended up being part of the research and also my team members were very lively. These girls were all really interested in the books and the texts and the assignments that we had. But as time went on, especially after the election, their participation dwindled. And what we found was that they just didn't feel comfortable anymore. At the beginning, the uncomfortability was around the idea that educators in the classroom would affirm white students at higher rates, either verbally or non-verbally, even when the same things were being said by both groups, just in different, obviously, language. And as after the election, it became that students felt a lot of tension in the classroom. There was particularly in all three of my classrooms that year, a group of white students who, were very proud to be, had these right-winged ideas, and they began, cutting students of color off, particularly Black and Brown students, and it got very heated in the classroom. It went into the process of like a lot of my lessons being undermined because the school is social justice centered. All of our texts, the texts we were reading centered these ideas of inclusion. So we read books like Stella by Starlight by Sharon Draper and The Little Rock Nine. And all of these texts, students who were part of this very small group, but were really disruptive, took the opportunity to basically disrupt the class. And so, you know, the girls in my research group were really verbal about that during our time together. And as an adult, it also harmed me, right? Because at the time as well, me and two other Black educators at the school, two Black women, we started an adult equity group. And in that equity group, it was obvious that there were also teachers who held a lot of biased ideas, and it was harming students and the way students showed up in the classroom. And so it was just a very uncomfortable year. And I started toying around with this idea of what it would look like to have a character like Yolanda. And then I went to San Francisco to teach at another social justice centered school there, a middle school. And the same kind of problems were showing up in the classroom amongst adults as well. And again, it was just so uncomfortable. And it got to the point where I was just like, I am just giving myself to my students. I don't care anymore what happens outside of this room. And I became very siloed into my classroom in a way. And I was teaching Teachers College writing workshop for my students. And every time I would have to teach them how to write a fictional story, I would show a model. And I found myself writing Yolanda naturally and organically. And that's basically where she came from this frustration I saw in all of my Black and Brown students during this very particularly heated political time, and myself. So Yolanda is a queer Black Dominican girl from the Bronx. She's 16 and she has I would say an untraditional life because she lives with her paternal grandmother mainly. And she also is being raised to follow in her grandmother's footsteps of going into the tradition, the religious tradition that they're part of. In the Caribbean, in the Dominican Republic specifically, this tradition is often looked at as like a wing of witchcraft, which is really not. It's honestly a religion. And so Yolanda, basically, the story starts where Yolanda it's her birthday, it's her 16th year, and she is being initiated by the Bruja Diosas and by her grandmother and by all the experiences she has been through so far. And the day of her 16th birthday, it's the second day where this boy, his name is Ben, steps into the school. We don't know this yet, but he has had some trouble in past schools. And his father, who's a businessman, is running for Congress. And he kind of just wants New York City to understand that he believes in New York City public schools. And so he places his son Ben there, to kind of opaque that he's had trouble at these other private schools he's been at, and also to, make it easier for him to win the hearts of those who will elect him. And so Ben steps in. He's obviously not in a space where he's comfortable. Yolanda is also, along with other students in the school, is also not comfortable. And they're trying to make it work. And she has her first vision at one point where she understands that he's going to harm the school to some degree. And so the story basically is Yolanda, who's already a fierce and fiery and very confident person, kind of losing confidence in her ability to tell the truth about what she's seeing because of all the ways in which the world tells Black and Brown girls that their truth isn't of any merit. And that goes back, right, to ways that I saw things show up in my own teaching experience, where I did see students speak up about what was happening in the classroom to principals and assistant principals and deans. And because there wasn't any physical violence involved or any violence that they considered harmful, it was kind of just like, kind of like, let's have a restorative conversation. And that restorative conversation was, of course, very, I would say, like, very structured and didn't really leave a lot of space for resolution to really exist. So yeah, I think Yolanda is one of like my favorite characters ever that I've written. And I'm just really proud of her. I mean, even seeing this cover right now, I'm just like, I'm so glad that I wrote this story. Obviously, there was a lot of fear involved and a lot of tension involved for me as just a writer, but all of the characters, her best friend Victory, who is the one like kind of holding space for her to understand that when she sees something, it is the truth. Also, like the person she's kind of dating, Jose, also holds a lot of space for her to understand, like, okay, like in the Western world, right? They might not see who you are, as a good thing, but like, I know that your powers mean something great and that they should be listened to. Her grandmother, who like is always supportive of her, but also pushes her to kind of take agency of what's happening in her initiation. And her teachers, right? I went to a high school in the South Bronx that I feel like I try to restructure here, because looking back at my high school experience, it wasn't perfect, but I would say it was one of my best. I would say it was definitely top one educational experiences in my life. I think I was just surrounded by people I connected to, people who saw me, and especially these were my teachers, and also the deans at these schools, the staff. And Yolanda has a lot of these folks. So Mr. Leiva, who's the school dean and who is really the most caring adult Yolanda has at the school, her advocate, and like essentially someone who is there for her and all other students. And then Mrs. Obi, her science teacher, chemistry teacher, who runs the Brave Space Club with her and teaches her a lot about how to navigate difficult conversations and difficult moments. And so, yeah, I'm really excited for folks to read this book and to introduce these characters to all readers and students, adults, all the things. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. Did anyone have any questions or anything they wanted to ask quickly? You're getting so much amazing love, Lorraine, in the comments. I hope you're able to read the chat. This is such an incredible story, not only your own narrative, but the book. We are so excited to have this on the Levine Querido list and out in the world. And just thank you so much for writing it. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, of course. Do I just answer the questions I see in the chat?
If you wouldn't mind answering in the chat, that would be amazing. Yeah, thank you. And then we are going to bump to the Chronicle books list. And I know that we are now in the midst of fall, and even though we're bringing out our sweaters and getting into pumpkin everything, we are going to briefly fast forward to spring. This list is fantastic. We have engaging nonfiction, laugh out loud picture books, poignant fiction. There are beloved characters and exciting debut creators, really something for everyone. I am going to pass it to our senior editor, Ariel Richardson, to begin things with one of our nonfiction picture books.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, everybody. I am Ariel. I'm an editor in the children's group, and this is always my favorite event of the year because I know I am always surrounded by friends. So hi, everybody. I wish I could see your faces, but I'm really glad you're here. So first up for you today, I have The Fire of Stars. Did you know that back in the early 1900s, scientists thought that stars were made of the same rocks and minerals and metals as our Earth, but just somehow, I don't know why, on fire? They did, and it was one of the first female astrophysicists, Cecilia Payne, who discovered the truth. Stars are made of hydrogen and helium. They are entirely gas. So this is just a breathtaking, poetic picture book biography. And when it came to us, it had two narratives: the story of Cecilia Payne's life and discovery, and the story of how a star is born in the cradle of a nebula. The two stories paralleled one another, and our wonderful executive editor, Melissa Manlove, saw an opportunity to intertwine them. So now you can read this book in three different ways: the star story by itself, the Cecilia Payne story by itself, or both as one story, and they all work together. As you can imagine, this took some work and some very careful attention to punctuation to put this whole puzzle together. I want to read you the ending because it is just so moving. It's a stellar discovery, breathtaking, but best of all, it means other questions are rising on the horizon. If this is what stars are made of, how do they form? How do they create such enormous energy? Whose will the next discovery be? So this is the final spread of the book that you're seeing on screen right now. The ending shows a future full of questions that will be answered by tomorrow's women scientists. The author, Kristen, used to work with rocket scientists at NASA. You all know Catherine Roy for books like Neighborhood Sharks. I think of her as the successor to David Macaulay. I think she's the next leader in visual nonfiction for kids. She is amazing. I hope you love it. I'll pass this over to Daria.
Hello, so nice to be with you all this afternoon. My name is Daria Harper. I am an editor in the children's group, and I am thrilled to be starting with a title that is very near and dear to my heart. This is Henry, Like Always. I hope that some of you are familiar with a picture book called A Friend for Henry. It's a book about a little boy who is on the autism spectrum and is looking for a friend in his class. We published this book back in 2019. It was actually the first book I ever acquired for Chronicle or ever. It was also the author's debut. And so we were just so honored to see the incredible reception for the book, which was awarded a Schneider Family Honor for Representation. So this book that was so special to us became special to a lot of readers and families. And that is why I am so excited to share that Henry is back, but now he's the star of his very own early reader chapter book series for emerging readers. We were really inspired by getting to explore more of Henry's world as he navigates all the challenges and triumphs of being a sweet and sensitive first grader. I see some love for Mika Song in the chat. Mika came back to illustrate this book. You may know her from Donut Feed the Squirrels. We had our wonderful author, Jen Bailey, back as well. So this first book follows Henry, who absolutely loves his class at school. He loves how everything is always the same. He knows just what to expect until his teacher announces that they will be having a parade on Friday, which basically just upsets like the whole structure of the week. Is just not okay. And as Henry goes throughout his week, his tension builds all through art class, all through music, where he gets an instrument for the parade that's very loud and jangly. And even his best friend, Katie, can't help him feel better. He just can't really understand why everyone else seems okay with his changing plans. But eventually Henry makes a discovery. He finds the special hat that his frenemy, Samuel, was going to wear to lead the parade. And so Henry gets an idea. Samuel can take Henry's jangly tambourine, and Henry will wear the hat, which is soft, it has a nice weight, and it keeps out loud sounds. And so Henry then gets to lead the parade, joining in his own way, just like always. So besides being funny and heartwarming and very real, I think the series will be so valuable, not only for kids on the autism spectrum to see themselves, but really for any kid who is particularly sensitive or anxious. It shows Henry finding his own solutions and finding his own path in a way that is really empowering and reassuring. The whole series will be focusing on school stories. So it's perfect for kids starting school or seeking reassurance about school. We have book 2, which features a field trip and dinosaurs coming spring 24. We have ARCs for this title. So if you enter the ARC giveaway, hope you look out for those, and just hope you enjoy getting reacquainted with the new Henry.
Okay, let me set the scene for you. As bedtime approaches, three young girls eagerly await the return of their father, who tells them stories of a faraway homeland, Palestine. Through their father's memories, the old city of Jerusalem comes to life. The girls love this place that they have never been, a place they cannot go. But they know that through his memories, they will always be able to return. So this is a moving autobiographical picture book by our very own Hannah Musheback. This is her debut. She was a children's marketing manager here at Chronicle Books for years, and I am betting that some of you in the audience remember her. If you do, put a note in the chat. I would love to know that. You might know her other ways too. She's a former bookseller. She's from a family of booksellers and a family of publishers, and she is currently working with indie booksellers at Simon & Schuster, so you might know her that way too. And I am so proud to be publishing this book with her. It is a love letter to Palestine, but also to home and to family. I really think this book will resonate with anyone who yearns for home. The book is dedicated to refugees around the world and all of those displaced by their homeland. I want to read you the very end of Hannah's author's note. She says, like many refugees, the rest of my family scattered across the world. I have relatives in Chile, Peru, Canada, Switzerland, Jordan, Lebanon, and the United States. We speak different languages, we celebrate different holidays, we eat different foods, but one thing we all share, stories of our homeland. This book is all about intergenerational sharing. And in fact, there was a lot of intergenerational sharing during the making of the book, as you can imagine. Hannah shared early versions of the book with her family. She solicited photos and memories, and she even reconnected with a few very long lost relatives through the book making process. I am really hoping she's going to write an article about that someday, because it's a great story. The book models why learning about family trees and family histories is important. It also has just a wonderful father-daughter relationship, so I hope it will be good for Father's Day displays. As you've probably gathered already, the illustrations throughout are based on hundreds of family photos from generations of the Musheback family. These are the front ends with the black and white photos, and then we have the back ends with full color photos. And there are real photos in the author's note as well. This is a project that has been really close to my heart, particularly because my uncle, who is Palestinian, passed away while we were making the book. I really hope you love it. And now I'll pass this over to Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Wolzowski. I'm an associate editor in the children's group, and I am so excited to be presenting the newest picture book starring the most lovable tiny T-Rex. Hopefully you recognize this character from bestsellers as Tiny T-Rex and the Impossible Hug and Tiny T-Rex and the Perfect Valentine. Well, he is back. Tiny is definitely the dinosaur we need right now. He isn't snarky or sarcastic or defiant. Instead, he is the definition of positivity, cheer, and determination. And my goodness, I think we can all agree these days we need this kind of character and these messages. This story is funny, reassuring, and sweet without giving you a toothache. And as always, J-Flex illustrations take Tiny's voice and make the whole thing just even more adorable and irresistible. This adventure combines a much-loved children's activity, doing magic tricks, with a school angle, the famous or infamous talent show, and another familiar childhood problem, stage fright. As usual, each tiny book addresses childhood challenges with a positive, can-do attitude, love, understanding, and a real appreciation for genuine effort. This is a wonderful book that will address a child's anxiety around public speaking in a way that makes it okay and understandable to be scared, and that celebrates a child's genuine effort to be brave. And lastly, I will just say on a personal note, tiny and pointy in tuxes. This is, I mean, who could want more?
Okay, so I hope all of you are having a good day over there and that it's only getting better with these presentations, but we all have bad days too, and Ode to a Bad Day is the book for that kind of a day. So this is the book for everyone who loves Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. It's a book that understands how the small hardships of a day, a skinned knee, or forgotten pudding, can weigh on kids and weigh on all of us. But by the end of the book, it's also a reminder of how easy it is to hope for a better tomorrow. So as we all know, the worst days are often the ones where not one big thing happens, but a series of small annoyances accrue, and it just seems like the day is stacking up against you. Our main character, who the make team refers to as Agnes, because the day is giving her such agony, she has to get dressed. Her cereal gets soggy. They're late to school. She gets cut in line. Everything seems to be going wrong. And once you start seeing your day this way, it is really hard not to notice all the ways the world is conspiring against you. But it is so important for kids to learn how to deal with bad days at a young age, partly because they just keep coming, you know, this is a lifelong skill. And this book invites kids and caregivers to start a conversation about days that could have gone better. It has a lot of humor and a lot of compassion. I also want to say that an ode is a specific type of poem. It's usually about things we love, but no matter what, it's always addressed to something, a person, an object, an idea. And in the book itself, we even have an ode to odes on the end papers. So there's a sly and delightful educational opportunity here too. I hope this one will feel relatable, and most importantly, that it will make you laugh out loud.
Okay, we're on to the first middle grade offering of this lineup. This is Don't Trust the Cat. So in this book, fifth grader Poppy McBean likes rules and order. She's a follower. She's totally okay with that. She is just trying to make it through fifth grade. Who can blame her? But after falling prey to bullying from her friends one too many times, Poppy makes a wish to be happy, and it comes true in a very unexpected way. Poppy wakes up in the body of her cat, whose name is Mitten Man, and Mitten Man wakes up in the body of Poppy. That's right, this cat is going to fifth grade, and he is ready to make some changes. Absolute madcap mayhem ensues as Poppy, as a cat, attempts to navigate the life or death intensity, like a cat's life, facing down wild animals and weird neighbors. And Mitten Man navigates the life or death intensity of being a preteen girl. And Mitten Man, who loves Poppy and knows all of her problems already, well, he's tired of her being so very passive. He decides he's going to turn her life around by any means necessary. So I'm just going to ask you all this. If your cat suddenly got to run your life, what changes would they make? Just a little thought experiment for you. This is simply one of the funniest and most ingenious books many of us have ever read. It is Freaky Friday meets Mean Girls meets Puss in Boots. The chapters alternate perspectives, and the way that author Kristen Tracy has totally captured these two completely unique voices. You have the way that Poppy speaks and thinks versus the way her cat thinks. It's just masterful. You're really inside the mind of a cat. This story is the ultimate in walk a mile in someone else's shoes or paws in order to appreciate a new perspective. And this very broad comedy premise actually builds into a really effective and affecting coming of age story. So that's Don't Trust the Cat. I hope you check it out. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, we're really pleased to be publishing a companion book to Circle Under Berry by Carter Higgins. Published last year, Circle Under Berry received starred reviews from Kirkus and PW, which said it is positively begging to be read aloud. The Wall Street Journal called it ingenious, and Hornbook declared it a triumph of design. Some of these snails, the companion, lives up to all of that praise, and if I dare say, surpasses it. If you were to put books by Hervé Toulet, Eric Carle, and Laura Seeger into a blender and press on up, you might as well very much end up with a book like Some of These Are Snails. The art is textured and accessible. The text is simple yet layered, and the book as a whole can be read and reread in so many different ways. So here are a couple. Here we have shapes and colors in very straightforward ways, but those two circles on the right-hand pages aren't just circles, are they? Ditto here for size, shape, and color, plus some imaginative thinking. And here the text gets conversational and the language play ramps up. Who is wigglier than wiggliest? So you might be asking, what kind of book is Some of These Are Snails? Is it a book about colors and shapes, numbers and size, animal sounds, patterns, comparatives, language play, abstract thinking, silliness? The answer is yes. Okay, our newest from Hervé Toulet. Hervé is so wonderfully attuned to the world of children. He has that magic ability to motivate us to be creative. Hervé has proven himself again and again to the critics, whether it's the trade, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine, or the institutional press, who again and again have sung his praises, starred his reviews, named his books to the best of the year lists. His books have enjoyed a total remarkable almost 5 years on the New York Times bestseller list. And that's because Hervé's books are filled with joy, especially now he's turned his attention to a subject that has always been close to his heart, dance. This book is a big celebration because it's literally a big book. It's 10 by 12 inches, and we know oversized books can be a challenge to shelve, but this is the one that makes sense because Hervé intends for the reader's hand to be part of the dance and for the book to be the dance floor. As you prepare to enter the dance, you wiggle your fingers and you're off, leaping high and bouncing back and forth like a ping pong ball, twirling like a butterfly, and landing lightly. In Hervé's previous titles, it's the book which reacts and responds to the reader's action. Press here and a yellow dot turns red. This is new. The reader's hand is the actor. The reader's energy fuels the action. The pages are only the stage.
I am delighted to be introducing the next title. I made these ants some underpants. It is as fun to read as that title is to say. This is the second offering from the creators of this spring's Wildly Funny Does a Bulldozer Have a Butt? That's Derek Wilder and Kay Steele. Can you believe it? These two have done it again with I Made These Ants Some Underpants. This is a book about generosity, about gift giving gone awry, and about creative thinking. But mostly it's 40 pages of sheer hilarity and just more underwear jokes than you've ever encountered in a good way. This book begins with a kid who's been given days of the week underwear set, but instead of being merely grateful, he thinks, okay, now that I've come into some underwear, clearly I need to pay it forward by making some for all of my friends, starting with, yes, a line of ants, except things do not go according to plan because somehow he just manages to strike out every time, whether it's underpants that don't always fit the intended recipient, like this octopus who has 6 legs too many, or this snake who has no legs, not any, or sometimes it's just like a right gift at the wrong time situation. But steadily the recipients and the underwear he makes for them get more and more absurd. Here he is gifting some undies to a race car and to a wizard who obviously makes them disappear. This book is so clever and it keeps you on your toes from page to page. The jokes aren't just in the concept itself or in the wordplay and the rhyming. They are hidden throughout the illustrations, because Kay is the master of visual jokes, visual humor. There's so much underwear hidden throughout this book. It's excellent. The ending of the book, let's just say, is very cheeky, but also very sweet. And just so you know a little bit about how it ends, all of the friends our main character has been gifting underwear to are actually turned out to be the toys in his room. So this is kind of a book about imagination and following your creative impulses, but mostly it's just a book that will make everyone laugh, and who doesn't need that? So this is I Made These Ants Some Underpants. And now, okay, I always find it really interesting when we have these kinds of unintended synchronicities across our list. Last season we had 2 picture books with hat in the title, and then the New York Times did a roundup of books about hats and included both of them, so that was very cool. This season we have ants and now ants or aunts, but these are ants as only the remarkable Adam Rex could envision them. It is called Oh No, the Ants Are Here. So yes, in this book, the ants are indeed here. They burst in on this little girl who rightfully views this moment with quite a bit of trepidation. This book is illustrated by Leanne Cho, and it's incredible. You can see right from the start, just the energy and the vibrancy of this art is off the charts. Now, most of us have probably had some ant encounters. In my case, as people I was told were my aunts, and turns out they're not related to me at all. that's how it goes. But you know, we know the deal. The ants invade. They bombard you with questions like, do you like school? Do you like toy horses? You don't like horses? When did you stop liking horses? Because they've brought you 500 toy horses that you don't even like anymore because you only liked horses when you were 4 and now you're 5 and things change fast. They have come with hand sanitizer and mints, leftover snacks from their flight, and they are not leaving anytime soon. What I love is that this is a book that is so specifically funny about ants, but it's also a book that is so universally true about family. The ways that they annoy us and the ways that they come through for us. And because it's Adam Rex, if you think that this book does not include a scene where the ants band together to fend off a big bad wolf with the power of their combined hand sanitizer, you haven't read enough Adam Rex books, but I'm sure you all have. It somehow manages to combine absurdist humor and incredible warmth, not only in the same book, but in many cases on the same spread, as you can see here. And believe it or not, I actually haven't even spoiled the ending. This book is such a joy, and I hope you get to check it out.
I am so happy to introduce you to Cindy Santamaria's debut picture book. She lives right up the street from me in Oakland, and she has kind of come up through the San Francisco art scene. For those of you who are local, she attended CCA. She was the artist in residence for 826 Valencia. She paints murals. And for me, this feels like Dreamers meets school's first day of school. The story is seemingly simple. It's the story of one girl's commute to school in the morning. Only Yanebi and her family live on the other side of the Mexican border. They're American citizens and they live in Mexico. So every morning they wake up super early, get their breakfast from the vendors they pass on their drive-in, hand their paperwork to Border Patrol, and arrive just in time for school. This is a common story for many US students, but one you really don't hear about very much. It was Cindy's own story growing up. Everything here, from the scope of the story to the very details, are pulled straight from Cindy's own life, and all the incredible hand lettering is done by Cindy too. There is Spanish sprinkled throughout the book in dialogue and in signage, and I'm thrilled to say that we are publishing a simultaneous Spanish edition for this book as well. I thought about Cindy's commute, which was a minimum of 2 hours one way. It could be up to 4. A lot as we've all gotten back to commuting more, going back to the office, going back to school, and it reminded me of all of the great conversations I had with my mom on my own morning commute growing up. It has been such a privilege to work with Cindy. I truly think she is a rising star in this industry, and I really hope you love this one. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Okay, Skyrobes. This is a story about Brianna, a kid who pretends to be fearless, who has worked very carefully to have this fearless reputation, and who turns out to be hiding a deep family trauma, which she eventually faces and is able to heal. In this novel, Brianna is pressured to go to a school team building camp where everything leads to a legitimately terrifying experience, walking across the Skyrobes, a rope ladder set that is set high above camp. This book is structured in parts, divided into chapters, but also days. So as we approach day 1, day 3, day 5, day 7 looms. We know that on day 7, Brianna will have to face the Skyrobes and confront for the first time her deeply rooted fear, which is tied to memories of a terrifying fate she suffered as a young child at the hands of her father. In so many ways, this is a classic middle grade fiction story, but what sets this book apart isn't just the camp setup or the characters. It's the author's ability to suck you into the situation and invest you so much in what happens that at points in this book, you will literally gasp out loud. It's a remarkable first novel from Sandra Schoenberg, who we are absolutely sure to be hearing more from. So please remember that name.
Yay. Okay, I love this book. Invisible Things is a very wacky exploration of the invisible things that make up our human experience. So it starts with our senses, what you can touch and hear and taste and smell, and then it moves on to exploring other invisible things like emotions, and even the abstract, things like math or the silly, like giggles. It encourages readers to slow down and reflect on all of those hidden forces that impact our everyday. It's really an exercise in mindfulness. And we all know that giving these hidden forces and feelings a name and even a face can help kids and help all of us to feel empowered. So I hope this will be an incredible tool for all of you looking to have conversations with kids about feelings. When reading this book, we can ask, what are the invisible things at work in your own life? or, you know, what are you feeling today? This book was vetted by a licensed independent clinical social worker specializing in mental health for kids. She had incredible feedback along the way, and she really loved the book, which was also just so validating to hear. You all know Andy J. Pizza already. He is one of the creative minds behind the best-selling A Pizza with Everything on It. He also hosts the podcast Creative Pep Talk, which I adore and listen to religiously. I have also come to think of Andy as a thought leader for ADD and neurodiversity. Andy has been developing the concept around invisible things for a long time. In 2018, his post on Twitter about them went viral, but it couldn't have transformed into a picture book without Andy's co-author, his wife, the artist Sophie Miller. I know we are all talking about the skyrocketing and anxiety rates for kids right now, and I really hope this will be a useful tool for fans of When Sophie Gets Angry, to be read after watching Pixar's Inside Out, and it's for anyone who is looking for tools around social emotional learning, which is just such a buzzword right now. We have a whole publishing program in store for you around Invisible Things, 2 board books, and a set of flashcards coming to you very soon, and I can't wait to show them to you. All right, we are on our last title here. This last title is called Dancing Hands. It is a friendship story told in Filipino sign language. But before I talk with you about the book itself, I want to back up just a little bit and give you some backstory. So this is the first book in our partnership with Room to Read. Room to Read is a global nonprofit based here in San Francisco. And our slogan for this partnership has been Read the World, Change the World. I have loved Room to Read since before I started working at Chronicle Books, you know, a couple eons ago. And for almost a decade, we've been trying to find ways to partner together. And now finally, we are launching this wonderful program together. So Room to Read does many things. They open school libraries, they provide scholarships to girls, but they also do what they call local language publishing. So in 16 countries around the world, they recruit and train local picture book authors and illustrators, publish their books in local languages, and distribute them to local schools and libraries, all for free. They are working primarily in countries that don't have an established publishing industry, often publishing into languages that are severely underpublished because they are so small. And so before the idea of own voices was kind of popularized, Room to Read knew that all kids deserved books made for them and about them by creators from their own communities and in their own languages. And Room to Read has now published more than 5,000 books. So Chronicle Books has committed to a contest each year for 3 years where we publish the best Room to Read book of the year, and the winning talent gets to visit us here in the United States. They get to hang out with us here at Chronicle Books, and I am really hoping they will get to hang out with all of you as well, and that we can set them up with some really wonderful events while they're here. So with that very long preamble, here is the book we are launching with. This is a friendship story. We have one girl who is deaf and who signs, and she teaches her new best friend who is hearing and does not Filipino sign language. It promotes empathy. It has strong back matter introducing the signs used in the book and providing additional context on sign languages around the world. And it's also just a sweet and beautiful friendship story. I am happy to say that a portion of the proceeds from each book benefits Room to Read's global literacy programs. And the next book in the program will come from Vietnam in 2024. I can't wait to share it with you.
Thank you all so much. I was muted, amateur move after 3 years of being virtual. I have been looking forward to this book, the start of this genius series, and working with these 2 creators since their editor, Victoria Rock, sent this proposal to us for possible acquisition. I first knew Amy Cito Forrester as a youth services librarian and co-founder of the Guessing Geisel blog. She was frustrated with the lack of diversity in books for readers of this age group, so she decided to write one herself, and we are so glad that she did. The talented illustrator, Andy Musser, who also happens to be her brother, is an artist, designer, and author-illustrator of Home Under the Stars. This innovative format is best understood by seeing it. So I am happy that Andy and Amy are here today to give you all the very first look at it. So without further ado, here are Amy and Andy.
Thanks, Andy. And hello, other Andy. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Oh, and I want to make sure that that screen is on the right slide so you don't get the preview of the middle of it. Here we go. Andy, are you able to see that okay?
Yep, I can see it. Looks great.
So here we go. Hi, my name is Amy Cito Forrester, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hi, I'm Amy's brother. My name is Andy Chow Musser, he, him. We're so thrilled to talk about our book, Search for a Giant Squid. It's the first book in our Science Explorer series, written by Amy and illustrated by me. You might recognize our names from different places. Library folks out there might have seen Amy's name connected to her work with the blog Guessing Geisel, or as a member of the Association for Library Services for Children. She was a children's librarian at Denver Public Library in Colorado for many years, and recently moved back to our home state of Oregon to be a youth services supervisor at Eugene Public Library.
And Andy wrote and illustrated Home Under the Stars, his debut picture book, which received a starred review from Kirkus and a silver medal from the Society of Illustrators of LA.
When we talk about our book, we describe Search for a Giant Squid as a nonfiction, choose your own adventure style book for transitional readers, a description that might be a little bit challenging to imagine.
So we are going to read a bit of it first before we rewind and share the inspiration behind the book, as well as the process we used to create it. We're going to do a little bit of a picture walk so we can show you as much of it as possible. All right, here we go, Andy. It's time to join the team. We're going to go on an expedition to find a giant squid because we want to know more about them. But giant squid are hard to find. So we need your help in making choices on our expedition. Some choices will lead us closer to a giant squid. Other choices might not, but we will still see and learn amazing things. Because we'll start off with this cross-section kind of a squid, because scientists have learned a lot from studying dead giant squid that have washed ashore. The longest giant squid ever recorded from the tip of their tentacular clubs to the other end of their stabilizing fin was 43 feet, which is longer than 3 cars. And all squid, including giant squid, are cephalopods, just like cuttlefish and octopus and nautiluses. And scientists who study cephalopods are called teuthologists. Teuthologists know a lot about giant squid, but they still have so many questions, like how many giant squid are there? How many babies do giant squid have? Are giant squid hurt by ocean pollution? These are things that scientists don't know. And they don't know more because for a long time, scientists couldn't dive deep enough or stay underwater long enough to study giant squid in the ocean, in their natural habitat, which is the twilight zone. For us to get to the twilight zone, we're going to take a submersible because they're small and easy to turn. If we tried to swim down to the twilight zone, our bodies would get squished by the water pressure. You might be thinking that submarines are underwater vehicles too, and you would be right, but they are too big and slow for this kind of expedition. So here is our human-occupied vehicle, our HOV, that allows us, a pilot, and us as the teuthologist to sit inside of it, and all of the fancy features that we need for our dive, like air tanks so we can breathe, and batteries so we have power, a manipulator arm there at the front so we can gather samples, and you can see the exploding bolts that are on that manipulator arm. Just in case it gets caught on something, we can drop that arm and be able to go. And we will use a research vessel to get our submersible to our dive site. But before we get there, we're going to need to make a science plan with our collaborators. This can take a while, but it's lots of fun, and it's all the details of where we're going to go, why we're going to go there, what we want to find. And we're going to get packing. We need to take everything that we're going to need on the expedition because there's no way to go shopping once you get in the middle of the ocean. It's cold, so we're going to bring warm clothes. Expeditions can be long and hard, so we're going to bring things that remind us of home, that are comforting, and also things that help us fix things that might break, like duct tape and zip ties. And we're going to get that research vessel ready. We're going to make sure that the hangar's ready for the submersible to live in. We're going to make sure that the cook has all the food they need in the galley. The berths are there for us to sleep. And of course, we need to make sure that we use the bathroom one more time, use the head, because the only way to pee in a submersible is into a bottle. All right, Andy, are you ready to make some decisions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Would you like to pick the pilot named Robin, who learned about computers and underwater navigation in school, or Scout, who learned to build and fix electrical equipment from other pilots and engineers.
Ooh, Robin is definitely qualified, but I'm leaning towards Scout today.
All right, let's go to page 61 to pick Scout. All right, Scout is our pilot, which is great. They're ready to go, and they're going to give us some advice on which submersible to pick. They're going to look for one with more thrusters for more power, but also if it has 2 manipulator arms, then we could gather samples twice as fast. So now we're going to go to page 24 to pick our submersible. You didn't find a giant squid today, Andy, but you did see a rare big fin squid. That is a dive. So that is just one of the 12 endings in this book. Not every path leads to a giant squid, obviously, but whatever path you pick, you are going to still see and learn amazing things.
Now that you've had a sneak peek at the book, let's go back to where it all started.
Andy and I were homeschooled, and our love of exploration started very early. Our parents made sure that we were surrounded by books and opportunities to experiment and ask questions. And of course, we were regular volunteers and patrons of our hometown library.
We created a lot of projects together as kids. We made birthday cards. I drew the pictures and Amy would write the words. We put on plays. Amy wrote the script and I created costumes and sets. And then we performed for our family and friends.
And as we grew up, we took different paths, but ultimately it was children's literature that would get us back to working together.
As adults, Amy and I pursued different passions. I got a BFA in illustration and moved to Seattle to work on animation and picture books, while Amy got her BFA in theater and she stage managed live performances across the country before returning to school to get her master's in library science to be a children's librarian. Although both our career paths ended up focusing on books for kids, we never imagined our work would overlap.
Yeah, when someone first suggested that Andy and I create books together, we weren't really sure if it could work. But once we really started talking about what kinds of books we wanted to write, we got excited about the idea of combining our different skill sets to create books that we felt were missing from the shelves. And this goes back a little bit to a few years before we started on the books together. I had taken some deep dives into books for developing readers. So it started when I served on the Geisel Award Committee, a committee for that chooses a book for beginning readers. I see some other folks in this room who've been on that committee, so awesome. And then after that, I got to dig in even more as a part of a project team at Denver Public Library. We explored the science behind learning to read and piloted a bunch of different ways to level up our services, programs, and collections for K to third graders and the grownups in their lives. And a part of that work was doing a diversity audit on our beginning readers and transitional book collections. Denver Public Library has a pretty comprehensive collection. Huge shout out to Sarah Dutel in their collection development department, and she's here today, I think. It made it so that this diversity audit was a pretty insightful representation of what was available at the time. And you can see the results here, which I think are fascinating and also completely depressing. So in 2017, only 17% of transitional books in our collection had any sort of diverse representation. And that's compared to those featuring non-human protagonists, things like trains, bears, noodles, and that added up to 44%. So it has been a few years since we did this audit, and children's literature overall has shifted to lift up more diverse creators and stories. But books for developing readers, they really continue to lag behind.
With that in mind, we knew we wanted to create books for developing readers with diverse characters. We talked a lot about gaps in what was currently available and what kind of books kids asked Amy for at the library that just didn't exist. As part of Amy's work as a librarian, she also visited elementary classrooms and she had fun introducing the kids to pick your path type books.
Oh yeah, the kids really love them. Anything interactive, of course, is a hit. And I would text Andy and I would say, today I shared this new book and the second graders loved it. It really got me thinking about autonomy and independence and about how a lot of kids just don't have a lot of control over their lives. So when you give them a story where they get to drive, that's really enticing.
We also talked a lot about our favorite interactive books as kids and why we wanted to read them over and over, even when we knew the answers.
Yeah, and At the same time, I was also exploring interactive storytelling through programs at the library, including one program that was all about giant squid. We measured along the wall to get a sense of the longest giant squid, and I bought some whole squid about the size of my hand over at the Asian store, and I put them in plastic bags and with water, and they could interact with their anatomy. I also did a program around that time that was kind of like half pick your path, half scavenger hunt. And instead of turning pages of a book, the kids went to different parts of the library, depending on their decisions. And of course, this picture is that time that I convinced my library that we should design and create our own giant cardboard maze.
Eventually, all of those ideas came together in our concept for Search for a Giant Squid.
All right, so now I'm going to jump into the writing process. So I like to start by writing different scenarios on slips of paper and then laying them on the floor and then taping and rearranging as I find new ideas and plot threads. I really like that physical act of moving paper around. It helps me focus. So there's lots of research, reading blogs and books and scholarly articles. And this picture that you're seeing makes it look really neat and orderly, and that is not true. What you cannot see is the pile of crumpled up ideas and the stacks of books open to sticky note marked pages and my laptop playing video interviews with submersible pilots. There's a lot going on off screen here.
One of the most challenging things was keeping track of all the different story paths. Here's a glimpse of a flowchart we made to make sure the page and word count of each plot line was balanced, and to keep track of the overall flow of the narrative.
So once I have something of a structure, Andy began adding sketches to help us visualize how the words and pictures would go together. And we constantly go back and forth, adding comments and making tweaks, and always working towards saying as much as possible with as few words as we can, while maintaining scientific accuracy. We've never worked really in person very much together. We almost always work long distance, so this helps us. And we wanted to make sure that we're using that scientifically accurate terminology, but also making the text as accessible as possible for readers who are still working on developing their reading confidence. So that's why when we felt like it would be helpful, we included pronunciation guides in the text so that kids might not be intimidated by new, lengthy, or phonetically challenging words.
When the story was in place, I started exploring how I would create the final illustrations. I gravitated towards a method using watercolor, gouache, and colored pencils on watercolor paper. After I painted all the elements, I cut them out and collaged them together. I loved how this approach looked, but it ended up being too time-consuming for a 96-page book. So I used my traditional art as a starting point and developed a digital method. All right, Amy, can you hit play on this video here?
Yes, I'm going to.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This is a time-lapse video of one of my digital paintings. It's super sped up, of course. You can see the original sketch, and then the design starts evolving as I paint. Those color swatches are the palette I use to keep color consistent throughout the book. And you can see different photo reference pop up as I'm painting. Here towards the end, the colors shift a bit for contrast and clarity, and I'm putting final touches on the submersible equipment. And there you go, that's the final illustration. Let's see. Oh, yeah, sometimes it restarts.
I get to next one.
There we go. Perfect. Let me see if, oh, here we go. Because there were so many elements to research and design, I tried out different tools to streamline my process. To help paint the boats and submersibles, I made digital 3D models that I could view from any angle. Using this reference, I was able to quickly explore composition options while keeping the detail and perspective of each vehicle consistent.
And we both really love doing research, but we are not experts in anything scientific. What we see our work as doing is sorting through lots of information and figuring out how to present the most important pieces to young readers in a way that's accessible and engaging. And so while writing this book, I interviewed a lot of scientists and submersible specialists. They were all so lovely, and they let me ask questions like, what can go wrong on a dive? And how long does it take to get to the twilight zone? And very importantly, how do you go poop in a submersible? And they shared photo reference and research and read drafts and provided feedback on tiny elements and big alike. And many of their actual stories they told me found their way into the book. like the scientist who told me about the explosive bolts. And another scientist described going on a research vessel expedition as similar to going to summer camp. You sleep in bunks, you have roommates, you eat in a communal area. But the thing that nearly everyone I talked to wanted kids to know was that their jobs are not isolated, that collaboration is key, especially when planning and taking an expedition. One scientist described it as endless inventiveness. And really, that's the spirit that we really hope that readers will engage with this book and the series, is that it makes them wonder and question and explore.
So finally, you probably heard us mention that this book is the first in a series. We're happy to say that we're furiously writing and drawing to make the second book, which is about
Fungus. It's about searching for a rare fungus in 3 different national parks around the world.
Look for it in 2024.
So we are just about out of time. We just want to wrap up by saying thank you to our publishing team, librarians, scientists, critique groups, all the amazing humans that worked on this book or contributing in some way to make it possible. Just like going on an expedition to search for a giant squid, creating a book is truly a collaborative effort.
And thank you for joining us today and taking time to learn more about our book and our process.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you both so much. Please, if you aren't able to follow along as you're presenting, look at the chat afterwards. There was so much excitement as you were going about the format, about the nostalgia of Choose Your Own Adventure and bringing it back and having this experience of sharing it with young readers. Gratitude towards the representation in the characters in the book and just this format for this age of readers. So please look in there. And I feel like there were a couple questions too, so if you wouldn't mind answering in the chat if you're able. But thank you both so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Super,
yeah.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
I am going to kick it over to Levine Querido with Irene and Antonio. I always so look forward to this part of the presentation. I feel like I create my to-read list after hearing your list of titles. So I will turn my video off and leave it up to the two of you.
Yay, welcome everybody. My name is Antonio and I'm, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Irene.
And I sound a little hoarse today and I'm hoping that I can make it through the presentation. If I don't, Irene is gonna like take over for me.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share our beautiful catalog so we can go ahead and get started.
Great, and we're not gonna take up too much time. I promise we'll be done in like 10 minutes. I think we've done this presentation a couple of times now. And I wanna start with Last Flight, yes. So it's a spring of 1975. It's the eve of the fall of Saigon, and Kristen's family must flee Vietnam on the final US flight out. Now it's Kristen's father who works for Pan Am, but it's actually his boss, Alan Topping, who comes up with this brilliant idea. So Alan Topping is a real historical figure. He was an American Black man who legally adopted over 300 people in order to provide them with legal documents to arrive in the United States. So Kristen takes us along this harrowing and hopeful journey, which is based on her own life and her own experience. She was on this last flight. And Dow Humiruk's pictures make us feel like we're right there with her and her family. I think there's like 2 spreads of some of the images there. That's them. Yeah. So I think this book is historically true, and it's also relevant in a time of displacement for refugees all over the world. Ultimately, though, I think it's like a story of a real life miracle. It's about the like the simple and incredible ways that people can choose to help each other. And all of the librarians will be delighted. Baby got back matter. This book includes a moving author's note. It includes photos of her actual family. It includes, there's like sort of a page that draws out factual connections with the story. There's a full bibliography and there's notes and interviews that Kristen had done with Alan Topping. Irena, you're up next.
When you hear everybody at LibLearnX sing Baby Got Back Matter, remember that you heard it here first. It was Antonio Gonzalez Herna. Next up, we have Ancient Night, which is a stunning picture book with story and art by Mexican artist David Alvarez and words by award-winning Mexican-American author and translator and beloved friend of LQ, Batchelder Honor winner David Bowles. Ancient Night presents a twist on several traditional stories of Mesoamerica, stories that have been told and retold and changed bit by bit across the centuries. In this version of the story, the opossum and the rabbit battle each other for ownership of the aguamiel, the glowing nectar that brims in the heart of the mawe, or agave plant, and that the rabbit uses to fill the moon with light each and every night. Once again, Baby Got Back Matter. David has thoroughly researched, he's a scholar of Mesoamerican history and he's an advocate for the Nahua language and has filled this to the brim with back matter about the traditional stories these come from, the history of the agave plant, and so much more. We are simultaneously publishing our Spanish edition, Noche Antigua, and this will be out on March 7th. With those stunning illustrations. Opossum.
I'm super excited to see the Spanish edition of this book. The next book I'm presenting about today is called Frank and the Mess Cat. It's Martha Brokenrow, my good friend who I've known for over a decade. And we worked together at Scholastic, where she published tons of amazing books with Arthur. This second book in the series has a really great premise. You may remember that Frank, who's the curmudgeon tuxedo cat, a house cat, he falls head over heels in love with a magnificent and mysterious stranger, except she's not a cat, she's a raccoon. Isn't that always the way? Anyway, what results is like this sort of like lovesick shenanigans as Frank tries to woo his new sweetheart with a love letter, which she eats immediately. I think the underlying story is really about how friends can support us even when we obsess. And I think the group dynamics are going to keep the kids like turning this page. And also just, how do you say, Martha's like hilarious writing. We can all fall in love, I think is a message we can all agree with, yeah. So next on our docket is Daniel Nairi's next book. What can I say about Daniel? He burst onto the scene in 2019. LQ launched our list with Everything Sad is Untrue. That book received 7-star reviews. It went on to win a Prince Medal. He won a Christopher Award. He won a Middle East Book Award. The New York Times called it a modern masterpiece. So after the release of Everything Sad, the pandemic really took hold, and Daniel picked up his family. They sold their house in New Jersey, and they have been traveling around the country in this like custom Airstream. And this kind of like caravan dreams approach to his life has really found its way into his next boundary-shattering book. The Many Assassinations of Samir, the Seller of Dreams, is a brilliant, brilliant follow-up from Daniel Nairi. It has chapter illustrations by Daniel Miyares. And I think what's really fascinating is that Daniel brings the Silk Road to life. This is like a picaresque, epic, like adventure novel. It's got twists and turns. There are desert voyages, Vikings, a phoenix, a flying dervish, and there's a wonderful surprise ending. If I try to describe the plot, I'll say very quickly, it's like basically Monk, aka Monkey, as he's known in the book, is traveling along the Silk Road with his newfound boss / guardian, Samir, who is actually this like huckster who's being chased by assassins. And Monkey decides that he's going to try to save Samir from these attempts on his life as a way to pay off his debt. I'm sorry. And the question is, how long will they survive until the assassins catch up with them? I think readers are going to fall in love with the bond between Monkey and Samir. Again, this is one of those swashbuckling, all ages page turner. Obviously, it's middle grade, but you know how we do. We just love to like shake things up and put books wherever. So I think it's for me a book that has the kind of funny humor that adults are going to love to read, and then the kinds of adventure and like commitment to detail and plotting that I think young kids are going to enjoy. Oh, and lastly, I'll say this is a book that I've been saying it's kind of like for fans of Salman Rushdie's Haroun and a Sea of Stories. If that were to meet the classic, The Little Prince. So Irene, back to you.
Next up on our list is a debut middle grade novel, Control Freaks by J.E. Thomas. I like to think of it as Wayside School for a new generation. It's a really funny send-up of a competitive STEM middle school. The novel, told in alternating points of view, follows a diverse group of middle schoolers working together as a team on a roller coaster quest for their school's inaugural STEAM competition. The protagonist is a Black boy adventure extraordinaire, Frederick Douglass Zesmer, who thinks he's all that and a bag of chips. He's hoping that winning the STEAM's competition is finally going to make his dad, who's been divorced from his mom and isn't always the best parent, take his dreams seriously. To get there, he's going to have to work with a team. It's got that laugh out loud humor that you love in Lupe Wong Won't Dance. It's got the multiple points of view are so fun and funny. You're going to be waiting till the very end to see if they win this competition. The author spent her career working in independent schools, just retired. She's based in Denver. It's just such a fun, laugh out loud book. This will be on sale in May. That's Control Freaks by J.E. Thomas.
And I can't remember if you were doing Pardalita or if I was doing Pardalita.
I can talk about Pardalita because I absolutely fell in love with this book when I got Nick, while he's away on his honeymoon, I got to read the PDF. It's a beautiful queer coming of age story from Portugal for fans of This One Summer. It follows 16-year-old Raquel, who lived with her mom after her parents had gotten divorced. Raquel's just gotten in trouble for cursing out a school aide for talking about her parents' divorce. She's got these two friends, Fred and Luisa. Luisa's kind of larger than life. Fred talks her into auditioning for this play where she gets to know the titular Pardalita. She has seen Pardalita from like across the hall, across the school, never really had the nerve to go up and talk to her. And after she auditions for this play, Pardalita is part of the creative team. She gets to know her a bit better. As the novel progresses, she comes into her queerness and her feelings for Pardalita. It very much resonated with me and my own queer journey. I too had an upperclassman. We were on the drum corps together. I was obsessed with her. She gave me a guitar for my 15th birthday. It's just a beautiful, tender graphic novel that's got, it's this stunning kind of blend of traditional graphic novel format. And then it's got these really cool like prose poem type things. We cut, usually in the version of the catalog that I did, there's this beautiful spread of them all dancing. You'll have to check it out on Edelweiss to know the spread I'm talking about. But it's just a beautiful graphic novel. Translated from Portuguese by Lynn Miller-Lockman. And that'll be a simultaneous hardcover and paperback out in April. Back to you, Antonio.
I cannot wait to, I just started reading Pardalita and I can't wait to finish it. It's just, I love graphic novels and I love that it's a translation. Okay, so Secret Summer Promise is from Kia Brown. She's a reporter and an advocate for disability rights. She started a campaign that you may be familiar with called Disabled and Cute a few years back. This is her debut YA novel. It's like a true contemporary summer romance. The plot is about a protagonist. She's a young Black girl with cerebral palsy, just like Kia, the author, who is in love with her best friend, who secretly is in love with her. So she starts dating this. So she starts dating this guy. So she doesn't want to mess up their friendship. So she starts dating this guy, and she does, and to keep their friendship alive, or so she thinks. And then chaos ensues. While her and her friends are also trying to have the best summer ever. This is a really fun book. Kia has this fresh, clever voice that's a joy to read.
Yeah, that's true, Jenny. I will say Mandy Moore and Kia are friends. So, we love to see it. I love to see Kia living her best life. It's such a fun book.
I love this cover.
Yeah, cover is fun. It's fresh. It's summer. It's romance. It's everything that you want and more. You all heard Lorraine talk about the making of Yolanda la Bruja better than I ever could. It's the moment, like that's all I'm gonna say. It's the moment. You should read it. You should get it for your libraries. You should recommend it to your friends. Like also, my quick note is that as somebody that grew up in like the post-Columbine generation, you know, going to schools, going to middle school, high school, in a world where gun violence was very present in my life, where we had to have active shooter drills, where we had to have, you know, there was one time we had lockdown because there was somebody with a gun on campus. Like, I think there are very few people, I never thought that I would fall in love with a book like this about a school shooting because I know there's very few people that could do it well. And Lorraine not only does it well, but she fills it with such beauty and heart and friendship. And it's just, you have to read it. It's out in April.
I know, this cover, I just can't. It's so beautiful.
It's amazing. It's stunning. Back over to you, Antonio, for Pedro and Daniel.
So we have another YA debut from Federico Rabia. We just had a meeting with Federico yesterday. He's a lovely, lovely person. This story is very personal to him. You know, it's a story of two Mexican-American brothers who are growing up in Ohio in the 1970s. And it spans their life from their early childhood to their teenage years up until their early adulthood. And here's the thing, both brothers are gay and they're dealing with all of this like internalized homophobia and also actual homophobia from people around them. They're also dealing with an abusive mother. So it's a story about struggle and it's about domestic violence. And it's also this window into a rarely seen world. But don't let me turn that off. Don't let me turn you off with that. I want to say it's also about the bond that allows these two brothers to survive and to thrive. It's going to have illustrated chapter openers throughout by artist Julie Kwan. Have a lot. I think Federico is an incredible new voice to watch out for.
Yeah, and I just saw the final sketches today, and they are beautiful. The last book we'll be talking to you about today is Those Who Saw the Sun, African American Oral Histories from the Jim Crow South, by Jahanila Avery. She's a lawyer, scholar, and journalist. For the past 5 years, she's done amazing reporting on Black vintage stores, Black history on Martha's Vineyard, depictions of Black Jesus, Black video gamers. Her writings appeared in Rolling Stone and the New York Times, and this has been her passion project for the past few years. She's been interviewing Black elders who grew up in the South during the Jim Crow era. This book is a collection of around a dozen incredible oral histories. And I think this book is such a gift. I mean, I grew up in the South. My mom is African-American, grew up in small town Alabama. So this is a history that I'm very familiar with. But I think such a gift of the book is that you get this intimate glimpse into these people's lives, but also a diverse range of experiences. So you get to kind of follow these individual stories between people who are deciding to participate in the sit-ins or not, going to an HBCU versus going to a newly integrated state school. There's an interview in the book with somebody who was friends with Huey Newton as he was starting the Black Panthers. And you get to see how, you know, integration comes to shape the Black community, and sometimes not always for the best. And so this book is brilliant. I feel so like just blessed to be on this team that's getting to help bring this into the world. Oh, shoot. I hope you guys can still hear me. It's a great book. And he wouldn't let me call it Integration Was a Mistake. But you'll have to read it to find out why. That's Those Who Saw the Sun.
And I think that's all, but I was going to say one more thing about Ediciones, which is LQ just launched our Ediciones line, which is our books in translation into Spanish. And I want to say, like, it's such a personal thing for us, especially for Irene and I and Areli and others who are here on the company. You know, I feel like for a lot of publishers, it's like, oh, we got to reach this market. You know, it's like this, like a faceless demographic. And for us, it's like, these are books that my aunt can read, that my grandma can read, that I can give to my nieces and nephews. I think it's very personal for us. And so we're so committed to making these, bringing you these Spanish translations. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank
Andy.
you both so much. Every single one of those books. I was like, yes, yes, yes. And thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you to our editors. Thank you to LQ. A huge thank you to Lorraine, Amy, and Andy for sharing with us today. As always, please reach out to us by email if there's anything in particular that you'd like to see in print when the books become available. We can send those to you. We will all be at NCTE and LibLearnX, so we hope to see some of you there in person. And if not, until next time when we have another virtual preview.